want is law and order. By the way, we don't necessarily, of course, if we need a new law, we want that, but let's forget about that. We have existing law. All we want is law and order. How many people watch Law and Order more than one time a day? We watch it over. Anyway, so Law and Order, you're familiar with. Law and Order is a story. There's 3 parts. You see the crime. You know there was a crime. There's no question. A third of the show is the investigators figuring it out. A third of the show is the prosecutors pushing back and say, I don't have a case. I don't have the evidence. And then a third of the case, they're in the courtroom and the jury has to figure this out. So all we're looking for is the American justice system, incredible justice system that works, to be applied to the situation we have. We want law and order despite the Sharia bills that we live with. Why should we have less law and less order than the people in Alabama? And I know this because I was there twice. The sheriffs in Alabama bring their officers, men and women, to learn this material. How can people in Alabama be safer than we are? So our goal is, how would we get law and order despite the Sharia bill? Well, one of the notions is, we have executives. We have mayors of Sterling Heights, we have governors of Michigan, we have an attorney general. These people are not in the legislature. They're not debating new laws. They have laws. Do they enact them? So one criteria is, what would it take for executive leadership to do the right things instead of the wrong things to get indictments of Sharia crime? To get prosecutions and to get convictions and to put an imam or the father in Sterling in Farmington Hills, if he's guilty, into jail. Why don't we have that? Anybody hear about any imams going to jail? So this is, all we need is executive leadership. What if there was a governor? What if the Sterling Heights mayor did the right thing instead of favoring Islam? So that's what we're looking at now. Okay? All right, so these are ideas that we are throwing out for comment. What if there was an executive leader who says, you know what? I really get this. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to fulfill my oath to protect and defend the United States Constitution and the state law. They all take the oath. This guy gets it and is going to do something about it. Okay? I'm going to have, I mean, this sounds so obvious, but it would be something he'd have to reinforce, or she. I'm going to have zero tolerance for Sharia-sanctioned crime. I understand it. This could be our Attorney General. We got a candidate here. So what are we talking about? Zero tolerance for FGM, or human trafficking associated with Sharia, or honor violence, or rape, no-fault rape, which we talked about last time. How about child marriages? We're not going to have any tolerance for that. I don't care what you think the imam said you could do. You cannot marry an 11-year-old who plays soccer with my 11-year-old grand. You can't do it. And this is an executive with, doesn't need a new law, has power over the state police, has power with the Attorney General, has power about how his Department of Health and Human Services works, whether they the executive in this case would have a head of the Department of Health and Human Services who would not go to a meeting every year and sit there when they call out white supremacists. And we know that's exactly what's been happening. We've had people in the meetings where the governor's people have sat there and let the rant go on about white supremacists being the problem. So we're not going to do that anymore. This is an executive who can make sure that these crimes are all, including apostasy. We have a woman coming to Michigan in a couple of weeks. Gary, we've interviewed at the Tea Party. She has a foul on her head because she's not a Muslim anymore. They want to kill her. If you leave Islam, it's called apostasy, and you're liable to be killed. These are crimes. How about sedition? How about replacing the Constitution? Amendment, what do you call it? First Amendment, Second Amendment, that's great. The amendments were added to the core. In the core of the Constitution is Article 6. It says the Constitution is the law of the land. Sedition means you're trying to make another law the law of the land. Sharia. And how about mass murder? I mean, why would you have any tolerance at all for 9/11 or Orlando or San Bernardino, instead of bombing the church in Detroit? So this is a simple statement. You shouldn't have to say that, but this would be the pledge of an. Okay, what if an executive leader or a candidate for office, for a governor, were to say these things, what would happen? You'd know he'd have to be brave. He goes on, this man or woman says, I'm going to maintain law and order because I know there are Sharia bills right here. I'm going to demand even-handed law enforcement of the law by fully trained, and he understands that there has to be training of investigators, prosecutors, judges, and jurists. We could be jurists. If we don't understand Sharia, well, we can make the wrong call. State police are under my responsibility, and I can partner with county sheriffs. How about social workers and teachers? Do they have any training to recognize what indicators of Sharia-compliant crime are happening to the children? If a young girl has some kind of trauma associated with something, or maybe is being sent out of the country, maybe she's being forced into a child marriage, or maybe she's being forced into an FGM situation. Anybody in school, social worker, how about a social worker that sees a young girl run away and responds to the police, and all of a sudden they capture the girl? She's 12 years old, they're going to put her back at home. It's a Sharia family. She's brought dishonor to the family. She's likely to commit suicide or be killed. How could a social worker who's committed their life to making life for children better ever do that by accident? They're not getting trained. The executive would have the responsibility to make sure that they are trained, and we just know what's going on. So this is, again, this is all what an executive can do. How about this? We're going to make sure that the religious components of Sharia, just like Christianity and Judaism, are protected under the First Amendment. Absolutely. Prayer, fasting, great. However, I have the executive power to prosecute any jurisdiction that partners with organizations that promote Sharia political system, namely the replacement of the Constitution. So if a jurisdiction like Sterling Heights promotes and favors Islam and is involved in a court case with 34 pages documenting that, as the executive for the state of Michigan, I want my lawyer in there. I want my attorney general all over this. In other words, I'm going to make a case that you cannot favor Islam at a city council level, and I understand that that's happening in Michigan. All right, we're getting close. How about this? I'm an executive. I can invite people. They don't have to show up. I'm going to invite everybody in Michigan who's an executive leader in a Muslim Brotherhood organization like these to come to a meeting. And I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to let them know that it's my policy as the senior executive for the state of Michigan that there's no tolerance for political Sharia crime. If you have political Sharia compliance and it makes that you promote things which are illegal, you will be subject to penalties, fines, imprisonment, and recommendations for deportation. This is the way we're going to run our state. By the way, there is a precedent for this. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And finally, I'm going to tell this convocation of imams and these groups that I'm aware that some of the people in this room were unindicted co-conspirators in the Holy Land trial. And I understand the evidence. And maybe I've even talked to a guy like Philip Haney, who built some of the evidence for the original and the subsequent crime. There's supposed to be another trial. The unindicted co-conspirators, like Kerr, were supposed to be in trial in the second case, except we got a new president, and we got Eric Holder as the Attorney General. That evidence exists. So anyway, however, as an executive in this state, I know you were unindicted co-conspirators. Therefore, that tells me you are under suspicion. And we're going to watch what you do, and we're going to be surveilling your behavior. And if we find any criminal activity, you, as the head of CARE, Dawood, will be aggressively prosecuted. In other words, we're not afraid of your law firm. They throw it all the time. We have law on our side. Okay, almost done. Oh, by the way, I know there's something about the sanctuary city movement, but I'm the executive for the state, and I understand that sanctuary is a really nice word. That would be a word created maybe by social justice religious leaders. Sanctuary. What a great word. Sanctuary is part of the church. Okay. It's really not a sanctuary city. It's a fugitive city. It's a city for fugitives of the law. So I'm going to call it a fugitive city, and I'm going to prosecute cities in Michigan that are not fulfilling their responsibilities to the U.S. government in terms of immigration. Why? Because these fugitives could in fact be coming in here as illegal aliens, but they're really here to promote Sharia, and I'm not dealing with that. That's against the law. By the way, if you have outlaw cities, it's easier to have Sharia acceptability. So I'm all over that as the executive. Now the question remains, if there was such a pledge, is anybody in current office or running for office brave enough to do this, to take the stand against Sharia?